Yvonne Heath was dead. Her life had been one of hardship, and in the end, she was pushed from a second-story window, blood pooling between her legs. She was still clutching an ultrasound photo that read, 12 weeks gestation. Before she died, she said to me, "I'm sorry. I'm just so tired. I can't go on. From now on, you live for me." So I took her place. From now on, I am Yvonne Heath. 1. I awoke in a hospital. Every cell in my body screamed in pain. And 4 was taped to the back of my hand, cold liquid dripping slowly into my veins. The man sitting by the bed closed his laptop and looked at me, his expression cold. "You're awake." I stared at him, saying nothing. "The baby's gone. It's for the best. A vicious woman like you doesn't deserve to be the mother of my child. Now that our last connection is severed, we'll get a divorce as soon as you're discharged. Why aren't you saying anything?" He frowned, his glare sharpening. "Don't think you can just stonewall me. With OUT the baby, what other tricks do you have left?" His every word was nauseating. I fought down the bile rising in my throat and looked away. But he wouldn't allow it, grabbing my chin and forcing me to look at him. "Yvonne, speak." We were close, so close I could feel the heat of his breath. His name was Jasper Kane. He was the man Yvonne had loved for 20 years. If she were here now, she would be feeling a pain like a knife to the heart. Her whole life had been one long misunderstanding. She had a voice, but no matter how many times she explained, no one ever believed her. As she said, she was tired. Death was a release. But I am not Yvonne. I don't feel pain when I'm misunderstood. I don't swallow injustice in silence. There was a vase of flowers on the nightstand. I grabbed it and threw it at his head. It didn't hurt him, but it caught him off guard, forcing him to stumble back. I ripped the 4 from my hand, seized the metal stool beside the bed, and swung it at him with all my might. The rebuke on his lips died before it was born. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. I gasped for breath, my hand dropping to my side. Blood dripped from my bruised knuckles onto the floor, like CRIM sun blossoms. "Yvonne, if you're watching, watch closely. See how I live." 2. Jasper's injuries weren't serious. He was just knocked out and stayed in the hospital for 2 days. After that, apart from the nurses and doctors on their rounds, my room was silent. I wasn't lonely. I was focused on recovering, doing light exercises every day. I was going to live a long, long life. On the day I was discharged, I took a taxi home. The moment I stepped through the door, the lively atmosphere in the living room froze. I surveyed the newly decorated house. Pink balloons and ribbons were everywhere. In the center of the room, on a large table, sat a massive 2-tiered cake. The woman at the heart of the celebration wore a soft white dress, her long hair flowing around her like a halo. It was her. The one who had pushed Yvonne down the stairs with a smile on her face, not a trace of malice in her eyes. Her name was Celia Rowe, Jasper's one true love, the one he could never forget. On countless nights, as he'd pinned Yvonne beneath him, it was Celia's name he'd whispered. To be fair, they were a perfect match. A match made in hell. No one in the large living room spoke. I smiled as if nothing was wrong and walked toward them. What a party. Why wasn't I invited? Jasper instinctively moved to shield Celia, as if I were some kind of monster. "Yvonne, I suggest you behave dash." He didn't finish his sentence. I slapped him across the face. My palm stung. But I knew his cheek stung just as much, and that was all that mattered. "Do you really think you're some kind of brooding CEO from a novel? Why do you talk so much?" I pushed him aside impatiently and smiled sweetly at Celia. Celia's face was pale. She clutched at her dress, looking at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Miss Rowe, don't look so frightened. You should know, until today, I've never laid a hand on you." "Yvonne, how dare you say that?" Jasper interjected. "What about Celia's car accident? Wasn't that you? And the time she hurt her fingers?" I slapped him again, this time with my other hand, and deftly blocked his retaliatory shove. My daily hospital workouts were paying off. Celia put on a fragile, terrified act. Miss Heath, please don't misunderstand. Jasper is just worried about me. Oh, I don't misunderstand at all. He's just taking his anger out on me. That's fine. My gaze slid back to Jasper. His face was a mask of disbelief. In his mind, Yvonne was silent, invisible, submissive. She was never supposed to be this aggressive. I turned back to Celia. Her eyes flickered with alarm, and she took an unconscious step back. But I couldn't let her get away. That long, silky hair, it would be a shame not to pull some of it out. I reached out and grabbed a handful of her hair. As she shrieked, I yanked her head down and shoved her face into the cake. Happy birthday, Miss Rowe. 3. The living room descended into chaos. Screams and curses filled the air. The maids rushed forward to rescue Celia. Jasper aimed a kick at my stomach. He was smart. He knew this body was still weak from the miscarriage, that a blow like that would be devastating. But I wasn't about to let that happen. I used Celia as a shield. As Celia let out another scream, Jasper roared, Yvonne, are you insane? Do you want me to have you committed? He had the power to do it. The heir to the mighty Cain Fordun could make an orphan girl disappear into a mental institution without a trace. He could have me killed, and no one would ever know. I picked up the cake knife and pressed it to Celia's throat, such a slender, pale neck. If I broke the skin, would the blood flow as freely as it had when Yvonne fell? With her life in my hands, Celia fell silent. Jasper was furious, but he had no choice but to try and reason with me. Don't be rash, he urged. But I wasn't being rash at all. In fact, I was quite enjoying observing the expressions on everyone's faces. Jasper, didn't you want to divorce me? I asked with a smile. He choked for a second, then a look of I knew it crossed his face. If you don't want a divorce, we can talk. But don't you dare do anything stupid. If you so much as touch a hair on her head, I promise, you will regret it. Threats. Anyone can make threats. But I've already touched quite a few hairs on her head, I said, looking innocently at the strands of hair caught between my fingers. A small patch of her scalp was now bare. For someone so vain, that had to be torture. If they had just spoken to me nicely, I could have been reasonable. But I am not Yvonne. I do not respond well to threats. So, I pressed the knife harder against her neck. For Celia shrieked, clutching at her bleeding neck. Jasper, save Mel, she's crazy. But what could he do? I had the hostage. He could only glare at me, his eyes darting anxiously to the wound on Celia's neck. Yvonne, whatever you want, we can discuss it. Do you really want to go to jail for assault? The dull blades scraped against her skin.
It was more painful that way.
Aren't you the ones who drove me to this? I laughed softly. I'm not afraid of jail. But the moment I'm arrested, the internet will be flooded with stories about how the head of the Cain Corporation abused his wife, cheated with his mistress, and caused her to miscarry. I wonder how that will affect your company's stock prices. That's nonsense, he snarled. You fell down the stairs yourself. Did I? I looked down at Celia. Miss Rowe, did I really fall by myself? I pressed the knife a little deeper. I'm sorry, she wailed, a mess of tears and snot. I pushed you. I was jealous. Please forgive me. Jasper's eyes widened in disbelief. Celia, is that true? Jasper, please don't hate me, she sobbed. I don't know what came over me. By the time I realized what I was doing, it was too late. I was just a little jealous. I'm so sorry. I remembered Yvonne gently stroking her belly, telling me she would love this child with all her heart. I had been callous then, telling her that Jasper didn't want it, that a child unwanted by its father shouldn't be born. But Yvonne had been firm. This is my child. It has nothing to do with Jasper. When we divorce, I'll take the baby far away. Then she had asked me, cautiously, You don't hate children, do you? Thinking of this, I suddenly felt tired. The child was gone. My womb was empty. There was no trace that a life had ever been there. I released Celia, letting her slump to the floor. The maids swarmed around her, calling for an ambulance, grabbing a first aid kit. I stood there, covered in blood, and looked at Jasper. Didn't you want a divorce? I walked over to him and patted his cheek with my blood-stained hand. Have your lawyer draw up the papers. Everything that's mine, I want every last cent. His eyelashes fluttered. He looked up at me, his dark eyes filled with a complex emotion. He ignored my talk of divorce. Havel misunderstood a lot of things. Misunderstood. I laughed. A misunderstanding is when you make an incorrect judgment based on incomplete or inaccurate information. But Yvonne practically tore her heart out and showed it to you. This isn't a misunderstanding, Jasper. This is you being stupid. Blind. And you've been blind for a very, very long time. 5. I never understood what Yvonne saw in Jasper, besides his handsome face. They were, I suppose, childhood sweethearts. The Kane family was embroiled in a bitter power struggle back then, and Jasper, just a boy, was sent to the countryside to keep him safe. That's where he met Yvonne. Those years were carefree. Uprooted from everything he knew, he clung to Yvonne, even promising to marry her when they grew up. Their families had laughed and agreed, but those were just the words of children. When he entered junior high, Jasper was brought back to the city. At first, he called often, saying he wasn't used to it, that he wanted to come back. Yvonne would patiently soothe him, but the calls became less frequent. A rich boy's life is full of distractions. A brief stint in the country, a plain-looking girl. These things were easily forgotten amidst the dazzling whirlwind of his new life. Only Yvonne remained, still worrying about him, still thinking of him as the shy, quiet boy who was bullied by the rougher kids. She never realized that he had long since forgotten her. So when she showed up at his university years later, suitcase in hand and a bright smile on her face, she didn't see that there was no joy of reunion in his eyes. 6. When Yvonne and Jasper first reconnected, I hadn't appeared yet. She was full of hope, determined to protect him. How laughably naive. An orphan girl, protecting the young master of the Kane family. The only person who could hurt Jasper was Celia. Yvonne was introduced as Jasper's childhood fiancée. It was just a joke from their youth, but the older generation loved to tease them about it. Yvonne wasn't stupid. She saw that Jasper had changed, that he was unhappy. So she always denied it. But Jasper was a bastard. He was in love with Celia, but tormented by her hot and cold behavior. So he used Yvonne, deliberately showing her affection to make Celia jealous. The first time I appeared was on Jasper's birthday. He invited Yvonne, but then left her waiting outside in the freezing cold for hours, all for Celia. I'm so lonely, Yvonne had whispered, huddled on a step, her breath misting in the air. She had smiled at me. Can you talk to me for a while? I was furious. Are you an idiot? It's freezing. Why are you waiting out here? It's okay, she'd said. Maybe his phone died. She pulled out her own phone, her fingers red and stiff as she dialed his number, only to hear the familiar recording. She did eventually see him. The next morning, he got out of a car, smelling of Celia's perfume. He saw Yvonne, paused for a second, then offered a flimsy apology. I wanted to slap him, but Yvonne just threw away the cake she'd been holding all night and said, "It's okay." 7. She told me she was done with him. I agreed. As long as you're clear-headed, it's not too late. But that bastard Jasper kept coming back, playing with her emotions, treating her like a puppy he could summon and dismiss at will. Every time she was about to give up, he would reappear, putting on a show of deep, restrained love. I would rage, I would scream, I would call her a lovesick fool. But was it her fault? Of course not. She was raised to be kind, to be forgiving. She felt it was her duty to protect him. It was the villains who took advantage, who preyed on her good heart until they had devoured her whole. 8. The pregnancy was an accident. Jasper's grandmother was dying, and her last wish was to see him married. She had always been fond of Yvonne, but she wasn't a stubborn old woman. It was Jasper who had proposed the fake marriage to grant his grandmother her dying wish. I had screamed at Yvonne not to do it. Why doesn't he just ask Celia? Yvonne had asked him the same question. Jasper's answer was that his grandmother had always wanted Yvonne as her granddaughter-in-law. It was a favor. For the woman who had helped her so much after her own family had died. Of course, Yvonne agreed. The wedding was fake, but the marriage license was real. On their wedding night, they were both drunk. When they woke up, what was done was done. Jasper, sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to her, said he would take responsibility. He decided to cut ties with Celia. But Celia wouldn't have it. She showed up, crying, accusing Jasper of abandoning her, accusing Yvonne of being a homewrecker. It was only then that Yvonne realized the truth. Jasper had wanted to grant his grandmother's wish, yes. But he had only asked Yvonne because Celia had just rejected his marriage proposal. From the very beginning, Yvonne was just a backup plan.
9.
Yvonne began to rely on me more and more. She was getting sick. When Celia was in a car accident and the driver blamed Yvonne. When Celia's precious piano-playing fingers were crushed by a piano lid and Yvonne was blamed. When Jasper treated her with cold indifference time and time again. Yvonne tried to explain. She showed them security footage, alibis. But the truth didn't matter. People always side with the one they care about more. And Yvonne was not the one they cared about. Jasper never truly broke up with Celia. Their forbidden romance was far more exciting than a legitimate marriage. Yvonne grew quieter. After they were together, she would lie in bed, a hollow shell. "What's the point of living?" she would ask me. I had no answer. "I'm so tired," she would say. I tried everything to cheer her up, but she continued to fade. Until one morning, she woke up feeling nauseous. Yvonne was pregnant.
10.
I don't like children. But for Yvonne, that child was a lifeline she planned for a future without Jasper, a future where she and her child would be happy. But that future never came. The child was gone. And so was Yvonne. 11. I woke up to the morning light, hungry downstairs. The maids, who used to gossip about Yvonne's humble origins, were now silent, scurrying to bring me breakfast. People are cowards. They prey on the kind and fear the cruel. I am a cruel person. I finished my meal and pointed to the maid who had been the most vocal in her contempt for Yvonne.
"You.
Come here." She knelt, begging for forgiveness. I slapped her twice. "Housekeeper, terminate her contract," I said. "No severance, and file a complaint with the agency." She pleaded, talking about her sick mother. "Not my problem," I said sweetly. "You can ask Celia for help. She's so kind and wonderful. Maybe when she marries Jasper, you can go back to serving them." Just then, the front door opened. It was Jasper.
12.
He looked haggard. He must have been at the hospital with Celia. I only cared about one thing: the divorce papers. The maid saw him and immediately began to cry for his help. But Jasper just looked at the housekeeper. "Can't you manage your own staff?" The housekeeper understood and quickly removed the maid. Jasper looked at me, hesitant. I reminded him, the divorce papers. "I'm not getting a divorce." "Excuse me?"
His voice softened.
"Yvonne, let's just forget about what happened. We can have a good life together. I was wrong. I apologize." "And what about Celia?" He scowled. "I won't see her again." He looked at me hopefully. "You'll forgive me, right?" Yes, Yvonne would have. But I am not Yvonne. "Jasper, are you sure you don't want a divorce?" "Of course. Why would we?" I nodded. "Don't regret it."
13.
I started living a life of wild abandon. I flirted with young models, booked out entire clubs. When reporters took my picture, I blew them kisses. Jasper spent his days trying to kill the stories. He was patient, thinking I was just getting my revenge. He even gave me more credit cards. I maxed them all out, laundering the money into my own accounts. Every time I saw him, I asked, "When are we getting a divorce?" And he always answered, "I'm not getting a divorce." He thought we could go back to the way things were. But I was tired of his face. I wanted to see him bleed. Why show ID? He always be the one in control. I had patience. And soon, my chance came. I asked him to escort me to a charity gala. It was a high-profile event, with a live-streamed red carpet. "I hear Celia will be there," I said. "Can we walk the carpet after her?" He hesitated.
"Why?"
Are you afraid she'll be embarrassed? Of course not, he said, his voice full of tolerance, as if I were the one being unreasonable. He had used that same tone to manipulate Yvonne, to consume her until there was nothing left. 14. At the gala, I was dressed to kill. As Celia was signing autographs at the end of the red carpet, I stepped out of the car with Jasper on my arm. At that exact moment, the large screen behind the carpet began to play a video. It was of Celia and Jasper in a dark club kissing passionately. The wedding ring on his finger glinted in the dim light. The crowd gasped. The camera flashes were blinding. The media swarmed us like sharks. Jasper tried to shield me, but it was too late. Mrs. Kane, were you aware of your husband's affair? A reporter shouted. Before Jasper could lose his temper, I smiled into the cameras. I knew. The entire place went silent. I took a microphone. Don't misunderstand. They were in love. Jasper was just using me to make Celia jealous. It was my fault for agreeing to the marriage, my fault for sleeping with him, my fault for getting pregnant. It was my fault that Celia pushed me down the stairs and I miscarried. It's all my fault. I turned to Jasper and bowed deeply. I'm sorry. The fault is all mine. I was shameless. Now I've seen the light. Jasper, let's get a divorce. I'm setting you free. 15. The story broke the internet. This time, Jasper couldn't suppress it. Online, a war was raging. I had already prepared an army of social media accounts to defend Yvonne, to tell the story of their childhood, to paint Celia as the homewrecker. The public tide turned against them. Jasper drove me home in silence. Is this what you want, Ed? He finally asked. For me to be ruined? Not just you. I smiled. If I could, I would have you and Celia flayed alive and thrown into the deepest pit of hell. But this is just the beginning. You can't win against me, he said. I know, I shrugged, but it will be fun trying. He looked at me, his voice laced with bitterness. Do you hate me that much? Hate is too small a word. He stared at me for a long time, then sank to his knees. I am sorry.
Give me one more chance.
I'll do anything. I stepped on his knee. Do you think your apology is worth anything? If kneeling could bring back the dead, I would kneel for 1,000 years. But Yvonne was never coming back. You know, don't you? I lifted his chin, my smile malicious. You know I'm not her. The Yvonne who loved you is dead. Your child is dead. Do you regret it? Your regret is so cheap. He trembled, his hands reaching for my throat. I guided them there. Go on.
Kill me.
Your Yvonne still won't come back. You killed her. You're a murderer. You have to pay. I squeezed his neck, my own hands tightening around his throat. His face flushed, but he didn't struggle. In the end, I let go. I won't be your widow. Yvonne will have nothing more to do with you. We will get a divorce. And I will take every tea-ing that belonged to her. I have more videos, Jasper. More secrets about your company. I will bring you down, even if it means destroying myself. Just you watch.
16.
I was prepared for a long fight, but to my surprise, Jasper agreed to the divorce. With no prenup, I took half of everything he owned. At the registry office, he looked like a ghost. Jasper, cheer up. I said with a bright smile. You didn't think this was the end, did you? I leaned in close. My revenge is just getting started. His last question to me was, who are you? That doesn't concern you. I smiled.
Don't worry.
After I'm done with you and Celia, I'll take care of myself. 17. I was created to protect Yvonne. But she always treated me like a child, always trying to give me things. She said I was born from her illness, from her inability to face reality. She apologized for the burden she placed on me. She was a liar. But Yvonne, how I loved you. I am your other half. You tried so hard to love yourself by creating me. But even love, it seems, cannot conquer all. 18. Later, I did many things. I used my newfound wealth to team up with other shareholders and oust Jasper from his own company. Celia, her reputation in tatters, was married off by her family to a man in his 50s. I donated most of my fortune to children's charities. One day, I saw in the news that Jasper, ruined by a series of failed investments, had jumped from a building. I calmly finished my toast and took a taxi to a psychiatric hospital. It was time for me to disappear. It was time for my therapy to begin.